Thank you so much. So yeah, it's really good to be here. Just had a little bit of sun come out here in Ohio, which is always fun to have. So my name is Nicole Jackson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in Columbus, Ohio, presenting from the lands of the Shawnee and Miami tribes. And um, I have a lot to say, so hopefully I can kind of squish it in into the time slot and with enough time for questions as well. So with that, I'm just gonna just mention I totally forgot that just seeing the layout of the schedule, like the keynote speaker Shelton Johnson, I totally missed that from I think it was a couple days ago, but I like it. It makes sense. That's essentially why I accepted was because he was a part of the lineup, and he's been a very awesome friend and just teacher and um, mentor to a lot of the work that I am in continuing to do and moving forward with. A lot of my background has been with environmental education, but now I'm moving more into the outdoor recreation world. So just being able to see him in all of these different environments and networks and seeing him shine and hearing more of his story and about his work has been very inspiring. So um, I will pull up my presentation here so I can get started. And all of you can hear me okay, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, so this is a picture of a juvenile bald eagle. So I'm a bird watcher. I love birds. And I've been doing it for a good, I would say 11, 12 years, off and on. I actually wouldn't even put myself in an advanced category of birding, but it's something that I bring into a lot of the work I do around environmental education and just time to enjoy nature. So this is a juvenile bald eagle that I came across at one of our parks here in Columbus, Scioto Audubon Metro Park, and I was doing a hike. This was a couple weeks ago, and I stopped at one of the observation deck areas to find some herons. And luckily, I was able to spot some ring-necked ducks and a common goldeneye. And this was just totally by chance, but I was getting ready to leave, and out of nowhere, I saw this bird coming towards, just flapping its wings, and I was like, that is a huge bird. At first, I thought it was a great blue heron, but it was very dark, rustic looking, and I was like, okay, maybe it's a hawk. It's getting closer, it's getting closer, and I eventually just like I froze, but I kept watching it. So it was coming towards me, and it hit the surface of the water, so I saw it catch something, and then it flew up towards me and in the branch next to the tree where I was standing, and it landed and it proceeded to eat whatever it caught. I'm assuming it was a fish, but I tried so hard not to scream because I knew what it was instantly. I saw some of the white, not too much, and realized it was a bald eagle, and it was a juvenile bald eagle. And so I kind of just stopped and stared, and I was like, please don't fly away, please don't fly away. So I was able to get some awesome shots of this beautiful eagle just snacking, having a little lunch break. And I have way more shots than this, but this was one of the awesome ones that I took, and it proceeded, once it was done, to poop and then clean off its beak and then fly away. So I literally was just like, I can't believe that happened. And that's something I will never forget. And I'm glad I was able to capture it with my new camera that I bought in January, and just witness the awesomeness of nature and wildlife just doing their thing. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about my kind of background, myself, how I got to this point in my life, and then go into a little bit more about the work that I currently do, and the different networks that I'm a part of. So there's a few titles that I give myself. I am an environmental educator. I've been doing that for work for the past decade. I went to The Ohio State University and got my degree in environmental education and interpretation. I'm a birder. I love doing that in my spare time. I'm a nature enthusiast. Everything nature I am obsessed with. I love learning about the interconnections and the relationships and the networking of nature and how we engage in the outdoors. I'm a park advocate. Any park that I go to, everyone is unique. So I always just try to visit a park, experience it, and kind of pay attention to all of these wonderful things that are happening in these green spaces. But also, I feel like each park has its own hidden gem, and like what makes it unique is something to rave about. So if I can get out to a park or to a green space to enjoy it, I definitely take advantage of it. And then I'm an ambivert. So there's a mixture between introvert and extrovert. A lot of people think I'm extroverted, like I guess more extroverted, but I'm kind of a mixture. I would lean more towards the introverted side. I definitely need time to recharge, and nature gives me that time to do that. So I appreciate nature for giving that that opportunity to just relax and chill when I'm feeling really anxious and stressed from life. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. All of my family is in Cleveland currently. I have um, been raised by a single mom, and I have 10 siblings. So I have 7 sisters and 3 brothers. And a lot of the stuff that I witnessed growing up in Cleveland was not fun. So there's poverty, drugs, homelessness, food deserts, not a lot of access to healthy food, a lot of like convenience stores, corner stores. There were some parks, but not too much of that, a lot of concrete. And when I did visit parks, there was not a lot of green. So I was very used to seeing basketball courts, baseball fields, the park sections, you know, where you have the swings and the monkey bars, which I enjoyed all of that stuff, but I definitely wanted to have more wooded areas with trails where I can just kind of go off on my own and just be, you know, by myself and in peace with nature. So this is a lot of what I've seen growing up as a child, and just again reiterating, not a lot of access to healthy food, a lot of liquor stores, corner stores, and a lot of abandoned homes, which is something that I just normalized and was okay with seeing every day growing up. So I definitely wanted more access to outdoor space to just help me um, just feel more safe and comfortable being outside. So when I was younger, I grew up watching a lot of television. So that was my other like world into knowing more about the wildlife and different habitats and different places outside of Ohio. So I watched a lot of nature. I still do. Creatures, Kratz Brothers was a show that I watched a lot, and they talked about, you know, like lemurs and lizards and all of these things that I've just like, I will never ever see that in my lifetime, but it was just really fun to watch and hear people talk about their passion and how, you know, conservation plays a part in the advancement of wildlife. And Wishbone, reading, I loved reading. Wishbone, I miss Wishbone. It was like, that was my awesome like reading show that I would watch every day when I would come home from school. And then the library. So the library was a fun place. Just again, if I wasn't watching TV, I was going to the library, reading books again about nature, gardening, even animal care, like how to take care of animals. So I was very interested in those things. So a lot of that just opened up these new worlds in my mind, and you know, just gave me hope to think a little bit more about how my future could look if I were to ever delve into doing these things as a career. So one of those things was veterinary medicine, which is what I went to school for initially. So I ended up doing, when I went to the Ohio State University, my major was pre-vet. So I ended up taking biology, math, physics, you know, the courses, just to learn more about how to become a veterinarian and kind of the prerequisites that I needed. Then I realized it was very competitive. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I think after my second year, I realized, okay, I'm not that much of a competitive person. I love animals. I love helping them. I worked at a bunch of small animal hospitals, volunteered, and got a lot of experience, but I couldn't see myself doing that long term. And I didn't want to put that much pressure on myself going to college. First one in my family actually to go to college and have that much pressure uh, to just have a career set right away. I wanted to have more time to explore other career options. So at the time, my advisor, Amanda Rodewald, actually helped me. She has some grad students who are working on a landscape ecology, like bird migratory, or not migratory, avian research here in Ohio. So they were going to, grad students were going to different parks within the community, and we looked at predation of northern cardinals and Acadian flycatchers. So that was kind of like an avenue I took to see if I wanted to do field work, if I wanted to do research. And that was another, because I tried it, it again gave me another way to kind of delve into like other opportunities I could have. So when I was doing the research, I found myself more interested in answering the people's questions in the park. So like we'd have dog walkers, runners, families with their kids, like, just what are you doing in the woods? Like, why are you, measuring things? Like, what's that for? Like, why are you here every day? Those kinds of things. I was more interested in answering their questions about what I was doing than the actual work. And that kind of sparked something in me to realize, okay, there's something with this that I want to do long term. So then I found out about environmental education as a career option. But with that, it helped me kind of really hone in on my relationship with nature and how I could build a stronger bond, which was what got me into bird watching. So essentially, it was these different things that gave me that like extra like intimate connection with nature. So it was very much therapy. It was very much nurturing, especially when I was anxious or stressed. And then birds in general, like just having that 3.5 months of research to do gave me another like perspective in how I can connect with wildlife and still be able to enjoy nature in the outdoors in a peaceful, more meaningful way. So birds are very much a part of that relationship. So after that, I was able to kind of go down another path, but I was able to build other networks from that. So my first official environmental education job was at the Grange Insurance Audubon Center, which is here in Columbus. And it used to be, that space used to be an impound lot, and then it was transformed into a bird conservation green space through the National Audubon Society, and then they formed a partnership with Metro Parks. So there's green space for park visitors, and then people who really have an interest in bird conservation, sustainability, and protecting green spaces. So this was actually this picture with a group, a leadership team I was with, and learning more about bird conservation in West Virginia. And that was my first time getting on a plane in 2011, like first time ever. And I was terrified, even though it was like 40 minute, I was scared. But realizing that I can go to all these different places and meet wonderful people who have these same interests, I just got on planes from that point on, and I wasn't scared anymore. So that just took away that fear, just knowing that I can connect with more people and to more awesome places. So a lot of the work that I've done with environmental education has given me a chance to, again, experience nature in just a very intimate way. So I've just taken a lot of pictures over the years, and this was before my fancy camera. So there is a robin sitting on the nest. I don't know if you can see the beak. So this was when I was doing 4-H camps in Ohio. And I just loved taking that time again to just witness nature and take pictures as much as I can. And here's some others. So it's a bat and that one up in the one of our shed areas. A puffball, mushroom, moth, imperial moth, I believe, tree frog, fish. I think that was a bass, and then an orb weaver. So the orb weaver is from we were, I think, trying to catch the fish. So in trying to catch the fish, we tagged on to this orb weaver web, and it got tangled in there. So I took it upon myself to take a picture before we gently put it back, and it came out awesome. So so another leadership group that I was part of was the Natural Leaders Network, and I did that back in Bainbridge Island. Was, again, like, I never thought I would ever go to places like this. Like, Bainbridge Island was fantastic in Washington, and there's about 55, 56 of us who did this training. So we learned about, leadership, storytelling, community, taking action, and like how we can create spaces to create programs for children, youth, and families in our own communities. So with that knowledge, I was able to create events locally from my own, like in my own community. So initially it was Let's Go Get Outside, and that was my first one. And it was just a way to bring families, community together to their local parks to see the value of the local parks and why they matter, whether it be through wildlife, having green space, having places to unwind from a long day, have your children play in, those types of things. So I actually ended up doing 4 of these. So after 2014, I did 3 more. I didn't think I would do 3 more, because after the first one, I was very exhausted, because it was just me and then 2 other of my good friends who were planning these events. So that first one, it took about 8 months to plan. And we just did a lot of like cold calling, reaching out to people to see if they would be interested in partnering, providing resources, programs, activities, things like that. And it was just all voluntary work. I wasn't getting paid for any of this, and I was still doing working full time. So to just see that people were really responding and wanting more of it, and seeing how they can be a part of the work was really rewarding. So with that, I was able to join the North American Association for Environmental Education conference. This was my first conference in Baltimore, Maryland. And again, just building my network, meeting more people who were in the field of environmental education, formally and non-formally, but also just learning more about the work that they do in their communities and how I could be a part of those groups and just learn more from them, and the people that have been doing this work for decades, or even students who are interested in getting into the field as well. So this bird here at the bottom is I think a Saudi Arabian falcon is what I was told, and I think I'm remembering that right. But Rodney Stotts is a black falconer in the DMV area, and he is phenomenal with the work that he does in his community. And he brought his falcon for a few of us to learn more about, and I got to hold him for a little bit, and he got to feed on a dead frozen rat, which is fun to watch too. So that was an awesome opportunity. So currently, in 2018, I joined the National Parks Conservation Association, their Next Gen Advisory Council, which is how I met Jess. And it was an awesome opportunity for me to learn more about the national parks and the organizations that support the national parks as far as policy, funding, conservation, even climate change related issues. So for me, joining this organization with people who are around my age and had the same concerns as I did when it comes to national parks and preserving them, protecting them for the next generations, is something that was really important to me. At first, I was hesitant because I thought it was just policy focused, and that's something that I wasn't really comfortable with just doing a lot of. I was more interested in like the education and community outreach But once I found out that that was a part of it as well, and just being able to share my story with people, that national parks are important to me, because there's Cuyahoga Valley in Ohio, and not even realizing when I went, I think it was 5th or 6th grade, that it was a national park. I just thought it was just a park that, that was far away from home, and that it was part of this bigger system just absolutely blew my mind. And I just wanted to learn more about pretty much all of the parks after that, and just connecting more with is park advocates who've been doing this wonderful work all these decades, and really finding more opportunities to connect young people to these issues as well. So in the picture in the left corner here is one of the other council members, that's Tasfia. And we got to take a picture with Betty Suskin, who's the oldest Black Park Ranger. I want to say she's 99 now, if I'm not mistaken, but I was totally like stalking her. So I was just amazed, just as, we got to sit and chat with her for a little bit and learn more about her career, and just her passion for connecting people to parks is just, again, very inspiring, very rewarding, and she's just so down to earth. So to be able to have that connection with a person that looks like me was just, it blew my mind. So I was very grateful for that moment in that time to spend with her. So that also allowed me to the opportunity to visit other national parks. So in the picture in the bottom right corner, we went to Tucson, Arizona, and that was my first time visiting Saguaro National Park, which was absolutely amazing. I didn't realize that sunsets and sunrises could be so beautiful in a park, and yeah, just knowing that those places exist that I can go to and enjoy was rewarding. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about, there's people that came before me that have done this work, and again, I credit them to help, for giving me that confidence to continue the work that I'm doing. So there's Carolyn Finney, who wrote Black Faces and White Spaces. John C. Robinson, who's in California, who wrote Birding for Everyone. He's doing awesome work to connect youth to bird watching, to everyday bird watching. Trace by Lorette Savoy, who's also another person I met at the same event where I met Betty Reed Suskin, as well as Colors of Nature. And then there's Drew Lanham, who's an awesome bird watcher, professor of natural resources, hunter, conservationist at Clemson University, and he's an awesome mentor as well. And then Dudley Edmondson, this is the youth version, but he did the actual book for Black and Brown Faces and America's Wild Places, and just, again, sharing the stories of Black and Brown people who do these wonderful things in the outdoors and promote conservation and the preservation of parks as well. So from that, Black Birders Week happened last year in June. That was an amazing event. All of it happened during the pandemic, which was crazy. It was all online. So we did it through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then we had discussions, platforms, and essentially that, as I'm sure all of you know, was created in response to the incident with Christian Cooper in Central Park with the woman who, Amy Cooper, I believe, didn't leash her dog, and he documented the interaction, and she proceeded to call the police to tell them that she felt threatened. And that just changed things for us. I think in the birding world, it's still very white, very male, very white, but then also knowing that there's Black and Brown people specifically who want to do more of these activities and they don't feel safe doing them. So we wanted to just have a space, platform to share our experiences. And these were some of the goals of the event, essentially, is to counter the narrative that the outdoors are not a place for Black people, where Black people should be, that we are in those spaces, we use those spaces, and we want to enjoy them. And then to educate the birding and broader outdoor loving community by the challenges Black birders specifically face. So whether that be discrimination, racism, not having access, those types of things. And then to encourage increased diversity in the birding and conservation, sorry, left a word out, in the birding and conservation fields. So a lot of youth that I've talked to recently, they feel like it's not meant for them to have these careers because they don't see the representation in the fields. So having discussions, really difficult conversations, involving not feeling like they belong or included because they don't see people that look like them, is definitely frustrating, but we are out there, and it's just, again, having opportunities to highlight and showcase that there's people that look like me, Black and brown, that are out there doing this work, enjoying it, and providing opportunities for younger people to shine in those fields as well. So the community and youth engagement. So from this, we were just able to get more stories from youth, families, Black and brown youth and families about their, wanting to learn more about bird watching or STEM related careers. And just, whether it be a good or bad experience, it's an experience, it's a story, it's their narrative, and they want to be able to tell it in the way that they're experiencing it. So a few others that were part of I was one of the co-organizers of Black Birders Week, but there was a bunch more. So there's Alex, Troutman, Karina Newsom, and then a good friend of mine, Tyke James, who just do this work and they love it to death. And they just want to be able to provide opportunities and resources and be mentors as well for the next generation of STEM researchers, however that looks. And then from that social media engagement, people showed up in different ways. So they told their stories. There's one of the stories from Miss Abdullah. She was wonderful because she loves to bird watch, but she's also a teacher. So like using the opportunity to give educators, like this is another way that we can educate our community, like about the wildlife in our communities and how important it is to have conservation efforts or funding or even equipment. So like not everybody has binoculars to go watch birds or field guides or things like that, to empower educators to show up in their communities in different ways as well. So not just kids, youth, and families, but also educators. And then another with Danielle Bellany, who's also a bird watcher too. We got to be a part of a lot of different conversations, and one of the hashtags for the week was Black women who bird. So showing all of the Black women in their communities that love bird watching and why they love it, and even some of the issues they encounter while they're out, when they're out bird watching. For instance, our hair, like that's a big thing of, being able to wear our hair, however, to enjoy bird watching. But sometimes we have to think about that, especially when we're doing research. I experienced this when I was doing my research at Ohio State, like, realizing I had to braid my hair. It was a lot of places I was having to crawl and, branches and all that stuff, leaves and stuff getting stuck in my hair because my hair's natural and big and curly. So not realizing like that's something I have to think about when I'm out in the field was eye-opening for me. And then from that, sorry, I need to take a breath, drink some water. I feel like I was talking really fast. So from that, I created Black and National Parks Week. I actually wanted to do wanted to include national parks in Black Birders Week, but stuff was happening way too fast. I felt like we had enough going on anyway, so I felt like I just put that on the back burner. And then August came around, and I totally remembered there's the birthday of the National Park Service in August. So that's essentially why I came up with the week. And Black in National Parks essentially was to, similar to Black Birders Week, was just highlight Black people specifically in the national parks, whether it be our history, our contributions, our stories, even the work that we do as Black people in national parks, just giving space to that dialogue. So again, people feel like they can have these conversations and be open and honest with their experiences. And a lot of Black people that I know were visiting national parks and didn't realize they were visiting a national park, or wanted to visit national parks but didn't feel like they could take that next step because they either needed more education, more information, or more kind of a support system or network for them to feel more comfortable with visiting a park. And a lot of them visualize it as being these far away, secluded spaces, which some are, but some of them are near urban environments. So really putting that in perspective of, you can go, there's over 430 national park units. And to say that number out loud, I don't think a lot of people realize, there are that many park units, but also that they're, in rural areas and urban areas, and that they can be a part of that kind of geography of travel, parks that are closer to home as well. And then the other side of it was just the history. So the Buffalo Soldiers, really speaking to that story of, them being the first park protectors of the national parks and what that meant. And that was a very complex history. Not everything within Black history within the national parks is black and white. No pun intended. But I think in terms of it being just our history, in terms of how we told our stories being in those spaces, how, for a good amount of time, we were excluded from visiting national parks. And I instantly think of why the Green Book was created. It was a way for us to be able to enjoy our time, or sorry, not us, the people that came before me, enjoying the parks, Black families specifically not feeling safe and having to go through so much effort to enjoy the outdoors, was just mind-boggling to me. And that wasn't that long ago. That was part of our history, and really highlighting that and letting people know that was just as much a part of the creation of the national parks as in any other story that we hear about. So one of the events we had was anti-racism in our national parks. So we had an awesome panel. That was awesome because Shelton was part of that. Bob Stanton, one of the first Black directors of the national parks, I think director. Angelou from Greening Youth Foundation, Carolyn Finney, and then just having a real honest conversation of what it means to think about exclusion, diversity, equity, access in our parks was a real just eye opener for people. So to be a part of that conversation was just, for me, I'd never thought in a million years I'd be on a panel with these amazing people having that conversation, and why, them really listening to why these things matter to me. So just another article that was written about the importance of having Black and brown people in national parks. And then a good friend of mine, James Edward Mills, who helped me with Black National Parks Week, wrote an article with National Geographic talking about the people who have contributed, including the Buffalo Soldiers, and then articles, connections in relation to other park visitors and their history to visiting and engaging in national parks were written after that. So moving forward, I'm just continuing to find ways to tell people stories, to help highlight the importance of doing this work. So I created within the Black and National Parks Week social media, I was able to create different discussions, talks. I did one back in February with the producers of the 20 and Odd film that was released back in 2020, February, I believe. And 3 other women, Black women producers who created the film, and their experience, their history, their ties to that history. And then in terms of Instagram, I'm just creating more, again, like kind of interviews, chats with everyday Black people who visit parks, and learning about their experiences, you know, whether it be their first park visit or they're planning a park visit, some of their worries, some of their concerns, some of the things they love to do in national parks, what they're learning, all of that is what I'm doing moving forward up until the next Black and National Parks Week. That will happen this year. So I'm really looking forward to just sharing more of those stories and learning more from them, learning more about myself, and things that I didn't know from these experiences and from these discussions, and just, yeah, being open to whatever opportunities these discussions create. So with that, I will end. And if anybody has questions, I'm gonna, I think everybody can see my information. So you can contact me by email, my Twitter, my Instagram, and then for Black and National Parks Week, these are Twitter and Instagram handles. For Black Birders Week, I believe it's May 30th through June 5th is the next Black Birders Week. And then Black Birders Week is the hashtag that's used on Twitter. And then for Black and National Parks Week, I'm still planning, putting the pieces together for the next one, but it will be August 23rd through 28th of this year. So hopefully you can be involved and help share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I kind of have a question of my own.
Yeah.
So over the last few years, I feel like we've had this, like, at glacial speeds kind of transformation from white-led organizations kind of coming up with these great projects to bring kids to the outdoors or bring the outdoors to kids. And I'm hoping I'm seeing a transformation to supporting Black and Brown-led organizations doing this work. And I'm hoping you can maybe tell me what is this, or tell all of us, what is the significance of this, and whether we're hoping to pick up steam.
Yeah, so I think it's been a long time of feeling ignored, especially with wanting to connect with a lot of these outdoor industry businesses, organizations, nonprofits, whatever you want to call them, institutions. There's just been a lot of like uncertainty with like how to show up. And there's definitely been effort, but I feel like that needs to speed up with just getting to know people and their stories. So that's why I'm highlighting the storytelling of what I'm doing, because sometimes it doesn't need a program. Sometimes it doesn't need, a policy. Sometimes it's just having a conversation with someone about their experience and really just listening, and not feeling like you have to do something all the time, just like taking action all the time. But just some people just want you to listen. Like, I hear you. I'm sorry that you're going through that. What can I do to make it less stressful? Like, some things are very immediate, other things are very long-term. And I think just having that acknowledgement that it's going to be a long road helps with the progress. And I think there's always just this reactionary kind of a feeling of like, I have to do something. And sometimes that's not always the answer. And I feel like even with what I'm doing, like, I didn't have a plan for this. It was just more of a feeling of like, I just want to see more people that look like me. I know they're out there, and I want to share my story first, but then also reach out to them to say, hey, what am I missing? You know, even as a Black woman, like, what am I missing from the experiences that people in my community are having? And just really having a conversation of, you know, have you been to a park? If you have, like, what are some of the things that you do that make you happy, that bring you joy, that relieve your stress? And then what things aren't happening, and how can, you know, organizations do a better job of kind of adjusting um, those efforts to make it more inclusive. Um, so for me, I'm starting very basic of just having conversations, and sometimes that'll spark an idea. But I also want to make sure I'm including the people that I'm connecting with in that. So it's not just like, okay, you're telling me this information, I'm going to take it and create something without including you, your voice, your narrative, because then again, that's creating harm. Like, you're creating trauma, you're creating harm in those situations, and then that relationship that you thought you created might be severed again, or there might be another wound, a wound reopened. But because it happened just that fast, you wouldn't know it, because there again, that person might be afraid to say something, or feel like it would be pointless, or I'm just not going to talk to that person anymore. And those are the things that I've witnessed, you know, in work that I've done. Like, I've felt that way of just like it's too much, just the emotional and mental exhaustion to try to like mend. Like, I'd rather just cut ties with that person or that organization, because the heavy lifting is so much more for the person of color or the Black person than it is for the white counterpart, who's trying to, like, with good intention, trying to make it better, but sometimes they still end up perpetuating um, the situation, like the stereotypes, or the, you know, microaggressions, or however that shows up. So I think really taking a step back and asking yourself, like, whether you're a person of color, whether you're Black, whether you're white, like, and you're wanting to show up for someone who's going through these barriers, these difficulties, like, where are you starting? Like, where is your uncomfortableness? You acknowledging that, you referencing, okay, I'm not comfortable with this, or I never knew that this was a problem. Why is that? You know, like, you're doing the deep digging internally first before you reach out to understand whatever someone else is going through. That, I think that takes a lot of work, but it's work that's needed in order to be able to move forward and not feel like things need to happen or a solution has to be there overnight. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. So folks can ask questions in the chat.
Yes, I see
and
the
then
chat.
also you can
the chat is
you
lighting
can
up.
unmute yourself.
I did have a question, Nicole, that
Hi,
I
Rose.
typed in the chat, so I'll just
Oh,
ask
okay,
it.
because my brain.
No, that's fine. Have you noticed, since you started your work, have you noticed that there's more Black and brown people engaged in the outdoors, in either anecdotally or in your experience?
Oh yes, for sure. And I've known this before Black Murderous Week, before Black National Parks Week. A lot of it was done in silence, just because there's that fear of judgment, fear of like, I always got asked, you know, being the one of my having 10 siblings, I guess the main one in my family who was really interested in nature. I got that from my family of like, why do you want to be outside all the time? You know, it's a scary place, or you shouldn't put yourself at risk by, you know, going hiking by yourself or bird watching by yourself. Like, I got that from my family, and it was very isolating. So for other people, Black people specifically, that I, you know, interact with every day in my community, within my friend circles, within just other like outdoor activities, a lot of them would say, yeah, I do this stuff, I just don't talk about it. I don't feel safe talking about it, or I don't feel like I'm going to be welcomed. There's always going to be this like, you know, like I'm a unicorn. That like, oh, you're Black. Like, why do you, like, what made you interested in these things, as if everybody can't learn about something that they're interested in. And I've gotten that so many times. It's just like, what got you into birding? Like, that's really interesting. And it's just like, why does it have to be interesting? Like, it's something I like. That's it. And I didn't see it that way. It's just like, I really like birds. Okay, cool. So I think a lot of it was happening is just not this announcement about it, because there's that fear of judgment and feeling excluded or not feeling welcome or not even having the means to do that activity like everyone else is doing. Because you do have people that, you know, I want to go hiking, but they don't, like, they're wearing tennis shoes. And then you have people like, why don't you have hiking boots? Well, I can't afford hiking boots. So it's just like this constant, you know, well, I shouldn't be outside at all. If I'm not doing it this way, then I don't need to be, you know, then again, it creates this harm, this trauma that they're left with, and prevents them from really just enjoying being in those spaces and enjoying that activity in the way that they want to, or feel that feels comfortable to them. Because the main two things are safety and comfort when it comes to communities of color. If they don't feel safe, if they don't feel comfortable, then what's the point? You can tell them about the amazing things of nature and the outdoors until you're blue in the face, but if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel safe, you've lost them.
So your example of being outdoors is a way of showing that this can be safe and it can be comfortable.
Yes, and but we still have those, I mean, we still have to be aware. So I think it's just the knowing the cultural differences, and not to say that like it's like an exam that you're taking of like, you know, your ABCD, but because you're taking that time to build a relationship with a person or with a group, it's building that cultural knowledge beyond the, you know, like classroom or like technical knowledge that we learn about when it comes to different activities. So yes, hiking, you can do hiking in these very technical, safe ways, but then at the same time, if they didn't grow up learning those things from someone that looked like them, that's not something they're paying attention to. It might be something they learn later down the line, but they at the same time have to make it their own. And if they feel like it's something like knowledge that they're collecting and making it their own, then there's more of that openness and opportunity to engage more in those spaces, because it's not nature that's impacting our relationships. It's the people that we engage with that is impacting how we see ourselves and how we engage with nature.
So is it okay to ask you a question? Anybody?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Sherry. Sorry,
okay.
you kind of cut out a little bit.
Yes, I did. So I could ask, but I really want to thank you for making yourself so vulnerable. I can hear the exhaustion in your voice. And I also, you know, I need to apologize because I could see myself saying to you or someone else of color, wow, that's so cool that you're, you know, a birder. And so I just apologize in advance for, or in retrospect, for having that bias that seems innocent, but really isn't. And so I thank you for pointing that out, because you know, that is a microaggression, and I know people don't mean any, you know, they don't mean that, but it still is. And so thank you for being, you know, vulnerable and brave enough to say that to a group of white people who, you know, yeah, but just thank you very much. I appreciate your work and your hard work, and yeah, all good.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think, yeah, that's, I mean, and again, it's like I've had to deal with this in different ways, like again with family members, because they don't have that understanding of the importance. Like they've just seen culturally that it doesn't make sense for us to do that because of history, which I totally understand. But then I also I see that side of it, but then I also see the side of lost opportunities to reconnect to that history, to the people that came before me that showed up, you know, put themselves on the line, to have these spaces be available to everyone. But then also knowing that there's, you know, racism like isn't always blatant. Sometimes it's very subtle, and that's where I get a lot of the, well, what you think happened to you didn't really happen to you because it didn't happen in this specific way. And that's, again, going back to the harm and trauma, like you're just creating more and more of that over time because it builds up from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. So once we hear it one time from one person, we'll hear it another time, and it just compounds. And that's where the exhaustion, and not even a physical, not when I tell people I'm tired, I mean mentally and emotionally. It's not even physical, but that is so much more of a burden to carry because that's where, you know, like we just close off, you know, we just don't want to engage because it's safer. And I think and if anything, for me, it's more of just being able to show the people that I love and care about that they can be in these spaces, they can take up space, they can exist in these spaces. And it's really essentially, so I don't know how much time I have. I'm okay with going over if you all are. But so for me, growing up in Cleveland, I was in foster care for a little bit of time with one of my other older siblings, and I was sexually abused. We were sexually abused in foster care. So for me, nature started out as therapy and healing, like a healing mechanism for me to get through that trauma. I was not paying any attention to the outdoors in the sense of I don't see people that look like me. I was paying attention to the outdoors as this is keeping me alive. Because essentially, there was a point in my life when I was really young that I wanted to take my own life because of what I went through. And nature literally like hit me in the face with, no, you deserve to be here. Like, I'm going to nurture you. I'm going to shelter you. I'm going to show you all these amazing, you know, the world can be cruel. It can be dark. It can be destructive. But just as much as there is that, there's beauty. And I'm going to show you the beauty. So like I built that relationship with nature first and foremost to be able to continue building a relationship with human beings, because I didn't trust humans at all. That was like not a thing for me when I was younger. So it was just like, okay, I have this nature that's showing me the care, the kindness, the empathy, the compassion of the world and what I can witness in this beautiful way. And I want to share that with other people. I want to show people that nature is healing just as much as it is educational. It's healing. So I always use that for anything that I'm going through really hard. Nature is my go-to to get over that hump. But it's given me a way to fight for myself. And that's what a lot of Black people, people of color, Indigenous people are doing. Like that's how they're fighting for themselves, is to be able to say, hey, I belong here. I want to exist in these spaces. I want to be happy in these spaces and not feel like I have to be on alert or feel like I have to defend myself, but just enjoy them. Is the work that I want to continue, and not, you know, it feel like a burden to think about going outside, but a triumph, a way to express our joy and our resilience.
So we have time for one more question before our excellent award ceremony over in the other room. So if anyone else has something want to ask or comment, please do so.
Hi, Nicole, this is Liz, and I just so appreciate you taking time with us today. I also think about how we can even outreach to families of color. And so you've really inspired me today. And I just thank for everything that you're doing and hope to learn so much more in this next year.
Thanks so much, Liz. Yeah, and I think this is a unique time, I think, to really help spread that message of just having more opportunities for BIPOC communities to just highlight themselves and like share their stories in the way that they need to. And our narratives matter just as any other narrative. And having that feeling of like, okay, I can speak on these things. They may be hard to talk about, but I can speak proudly about my experience and not have that like stigma tied to it, whether it be with your family, the community you're in, or even the institutions that you want to connect with, because it's going to be a long road. I don't think this is going to like heal itself anytime soon, but that's a part of everybody's individual lives. Like we all have these individual journeys that we're going on to heal. And sometimes we go back and sometimes we move forward, but it's always going to be an ebb and flow. There's never like, okay, everybody's pushing forward at the same time, in the same moment. And like everybody's having these epiphanies of what they need to do right, like all of that is a learning journey, and that's where I am. So I never sum it up into like the title that I give myself. I just see it as like me being human and learning, like on this learning journey. And nature teaches these wonderful life lessons that I'd never thought I would be like so in tune with more now than ever, to just better show up for myself. And if I'm struggling, acknowledge it. Just acknowledge it. And that's the start of rebuilding a relationship with yourself, because we're not the same people that we were when we were younger. So thanks.
Thank you so much for your time, for your short notice presentation. That was amazing. And I'm going to encourage everybody to jump on over to our closing ceremony with Shane Doyle and our awards ceremony that we are about to have at noon over in the other room. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you, Nicole. That was amazing.
Yes.